Put any questions you have for Coach McClure, or put that you want to ask him a question in the chat, and we'll get started. We'll start with Jeff Ferrato from SI.
Angus, how you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
Great. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing from Jake Curran, both in the spring and so far in camp. He's one of the more experienced guys on your line.
Well, I really enjoy working with Jake. I recruited Jake when he was in high school, so I got to know him a little bit, and it's been nice to have some experience with him here at Cal. He's a really coachable young man. You could tell he's an experienced guy. You could tell he's been around, some great offensive line coaches, and really enjoying it, watching him improve daily. He brings a lot of leadership to the group. He's somewhat vocal, which is very positive, and I expect big things out of him this year.
And what's your overall evaluation of the O-line's progress so far after, I guess, about 6 practices?
I think we're continuing to improve every day. We're taking the installation slower than we typically do, which I think has been great for this group. We're really focusing on the schematics and thinking big picture first, and then tightening it down to each individual position. We're really focusing on communication, making sure all 5 guys, sometimes 6, sometimes 7 guys with tight ends and running backs, we're all on the same page. So we're really tightening it down, not being in a hurry to get through a giant 12-day installation, but slowing it down, making sure everybody's on the same page.
Thank you.
Okay, Rusty Simmons, questions?
Coach, you've got a lot of experience there on the line returning. This is probably pretty obvious, but what does that mean to you guys? What does that allow you to do?
Well, I think anytime you have a group of players that have been in a competitive situation before multiple times, many times, is only going to help the group based on experience. And whether it's seen different defensive fronts, whether it's seen different stunts, whether it's seen different blitzes, they've had experience working with each other. And that's a big positive for the group. The biggest challenge for us is communication-wise, making sure that our vocabulary is the same, making sure we're seeing the game the same way, and really just building more cohesion. And I think you can never get enough of that coaching the offensive line. I mean, we have 5 guys on the field, and we need to be a fist and work together, because if one of us is not on the same page, that's where you give up sacks. And certainly with the running backs too, and the tight ends, having some guys that have experience is huge. So everybody understands the scheme and the how-to and how we're going to get things done on offense.
Coach Musgrave had some nice things to say this morning about Will Craig. In a week's worth of practices here, what have you seen from your left tackle?
Well, I've always been impressed with Will Craig. He's another young man that I recruited out of high school, out of Granite Bay High School, and he always impressed me as a overall athlete. I think he's got extremely good feet. He's got good awareness. He's got natural hip bend, which really helps for pass protection. He's the ability to run. So as an overall athlete, Will is excellent. So it's my job to actually take him to a higher level than he's played in the past, and to showcase those talents, and whether it's different sets, whether it's a vertical set or a kick set, or in the run game, increasing his physicality in the run game. That's up to me to do, but certainly I've been very impressed with Will so far.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up we have Trace Travers from Rivals.
Hey, Coach. It's good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, I wanted to, when we talked to Coach Musgrave a little bit ago, he said you guys have depth on your left side of your offensive line with Will, with Matt Cindric, with Daltoso in particular. I wanted to know a little bit more about what you foresee for Daltoso this year and what his role is going to be like.
Well, Val's kind of the jack of all trades. He's got a lot of experience. He's a guy that I think we could put anywhere across the board, certainly at both guard positions and both tackle positions. Right now we have him on the left side. He's working left guard and left tackle. And we all know that we need, with all the experience we have, we need 8 to 10 guys that can play offensive line, especially with the situation we're going into this year. And Val's one of those guys that, he could play both positions or multiple positions in a game. And, he's the type of guy that shows a lot of leadership, not only on the field, but off the field. And he's really going to be able to help the Bears out this year.
And to kind of flip it to the right side, Coach Musgrave said you're pretty solidified there with Jake and McCade. What has McCade showed you so far?
McCade is a physical presence on our offensive line. He plays with a lot of aggressive attitude, which fits my style. He brings a lot of energy to the group. And so I think, at times we're going to lean on him for that energy when we need it. Say we're on a 10, 12, 13 play drive and we need that energy to push it into the end zone. I think a lot of that would come from McCade. I think a lot of it would come from Mike and certainly the other seniors in there too, Jake and Val. So, but he brings a lot of swag and attitude to the offensive line, which I like to see.
And just as a whole, has there been anything that's been, I guess, new in teaching a new scheme to them? Because I imagine you're still running gap scheme, you're still running zone, you're still running kind of the same things, just in a different way.
Correct. And so the biggest teaching moment is really the vocabulary and the communication. And what I've tried to do is obviously with my West Coast background and West Coast offensive line background, I use those type of terms. But to make things easier at times, it's easier for me to learn a new term than to have 18 guys learn it. And so, I certainly am open to ideas from the players to make things easier for them. It doesn't make sense to reteach something new to them when they already know something and already have a term for it. So I show some flexibility in my essentially Angusology, the terms that I use.
Fantastic. Thank you, Coach.
Next, we have Jim McGill from Bear Insider.
Hey, Coach, good to hear you. I like that Angusology.
It's a great study here at Cal.
So can you talk a little bit about freshman Everett Johnson? Obviously, freshmen come in and have a lot to learn, but he's got the size. Where do you see him fitting in this year? Do you think he might be able to make enough progress to potentially see the rotation?
Well, I'll tell you what, and this is going to make me sound like a poor recruiter because I recruited Everett too at a Turlock. In fact, I was the first one to offer him, I think, when he was a sophomore. I went and watched him play baseball out there in the Valley. But Everett is, again, like a lot of guys we have on the offensive line, very talented athletically, can do multiple things. I think the more Everett plays, the more he's impressing the staff. And I would say his best practice was his last practice. And that's how it's been through camp so far. So he's really improving. I mean, he's a young guy. He's a sponge. I think if he continues to improve, we'll kind of see where he's at. I think he's fighting right now to be in the 2 deep, which right now he's right on the verge. And I would expect him, just knowing him, knowing his background and how competitive he is, that he's going to fight for that second tackle spot. Everett's also a type of athlete that we could also move inside if we needed to. Certainly he runs well and those type of things. But I think he'll keep pushing. He's going to keep pushing and we'll kind of see where it's at. We still got a long ways to go.
So you played last year, McCade, and obviously he got some nice attention for his strong play, but the other three guys in the 2019 class don't hear as much about. What kind of progress are Braden and Brian and Ben making so far?
Well, I think Ben has made a nice transition to the offensive line. Remember, he started as a defensive lineman and he's moved over. I think he shows some great flexibility. He's got great knee bend, hip bend, ankle flexion, those type of things. I think he's really picking up the offense. Right now, Ben's playing on both sides of the offensive line, right guard and left guard. And so he's fighting for that second group. I think you mentioned Romy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
He's been backing up the left tackle position. I think he's shown improvement since the spring. He's had a great summer. I know he was training a lot in Arizona when he wasn't here in Berkeley and has shown improvement. He is an aggressive type of player, as I mentioned earlier, similar to McCade, where he likes to get after it. He likes to play aggressive. And so I see him, again, going into this season where depth is going to be huge for the offensive line. I definitely see him competing and competing and getting out there and getting on the field for us. So I think he's another guy. I'm not sure if you mentioned Eric Nisich. He's a walk-on offensive lineman. He's another guy that flipped over from the defensive line. He's competing for the left guard spot. He's really done well this camp so far. And again, he's someone like Everett that's improved and gotten better. Not sure who else you mentioned there. Pardon me?
Brian Driscoll.
Yeah, Driscoll's done a nice job at center. Backing up Mike is a great opportunity for him to learn from someone experienced, as bright as Mike and aggressive, smart player like Mike. And he's done a great job of picking up the offense. The center, and like in all offenses, is essentially making all the calls. Driscoll's done a really good job by identifying the defensive fronts, identifying the blocking scheme, and he's been executing well. And he's got good size and good girth. So when we see these odd fronts, he'll be able to hold up for us.
And I just want to ask you about Patazzi too. He's a guy who battled some health problems. Has he gotten healthy? Is he contributing?
All right, keep this a secret now. But so far, he's probably the most improved guy in the offensive line. And we don't want to tell him because we don't want his head to get big. But PJ's really been competing every day. He's been competing the individual drill. He's kind of gone out with the framework that he's going to compete at practice and not just survive. You could tell the work he's put in the offseason, and he's been nice to see develop so far this camp.
Great, thank you.
Next, we have Jasper Sundin from the Daily Cal.
Hey, Coach. You talked about saying like having 8 to 10 guys who can play O-line, especially in a season like this. Has the pandemic and like obviously the possibility of missing time and missing games changed how you approach practice, how you approach players, how you give them reps?
100%. Right now, I would say our first group and our second group for the offensive line are getting equal reps. I'm also taking guys and I'm moving them on like Val and different guys. Sindo's moving around, playing multiple positions. Romy is going to play both tackles. Brandon Mello, who is, again, he's a guy we didn't talk about earlier, but he's having a very good camp. He's going to get some experience playing left tackle. Ben Coleman playing both spots. We're going to have guys ready for anything that can happen coming up this season. And so, again, I like to have 8 to 10 guys. Obviously, I've done it with less guys in the past at lower levels of football that I've coached. But, again, we don't know exactly how this thing is going to go. And so I just need to have everybody ready at all times.
Is that something you think other coaches are doing?
I would believe so, but it's kind of funny. Offensive line coaches are very much creatures of habit, and they kind of like to build the 5 guys together. Now, I agree with that 100%, But in the past, for development, especially the young guys, I've wanted them to play multiple positions, whatever position I've coached, D-line, tight ends, I mean, you name it, multiple positions. And I think that only helps their development. You know, if you're a freshman, a sophomore, you know, you want to get experience and find a spot to compete, to plug into behind those older guys. And I just believe it's for the players' benefit to learn multiple things. Now, obviously, in a season, a regular season, you want to build those 5 guys. But right now, it's a moving puzzle, and I'm trying to get everybody experience. I'm trying to keep everything simple up front so we can just go out and execute our offense.
And then speaking of multiple positions, I know the D-line is a little shorthanded. You talked about guys have moved from the D-line to the O-line in the past. Do you anticipate, can you think of anyone going the other way just because they have a bit less depth this season?
You know, I don't think so right now. I think obviously if something happened down the line, that's a perk for us, and it's a perk for some of the guys on the offensive line because they have experience on the defensive line. So if something, you know, happened where we needed to bring some guys over, I think Coach Wilcox would not hesitate. We're going to do whatever it takes, you know, to help the team win. And, you know, we've done that in the past. In my coaching career, I've done that in the past where I was coaching both defensive line, and then I would take some of my defensive line players and I coached offense in certain packages. And whether I was coaching tight ends with Noel Mazzoni or fullbacks or things like that, I mean, we have experience on the staff to move players from one side of the ball to the other side of the ball. And fortunately, I've been very, very lucky and had great success in doing that.
It all up for grabs. Is Will the leader there, or is Daltoso still in the mix, or how do you look at that?
Well, you know, I look at it as we're going to compete every day. I'm not ready to name the starting unit quite yet. I'm under the philosophy that we're going to come out and compete every day. And I think as early as we are in the camp, we have a long ways to go. You know, but right now, you know, if we lined up to play today, you know, Will's going to be at left tackle. But I would also tell you this, Val's going to be at left guard and left tackle because we're not ready to go out and take 85 snaps. So, again, we have to have multiple guys ready to play that left tackle position.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jim McGill.
So, Coach, I don't know that I've ever seen a situation where an offensive line went from so thin and injured and inexperienced last year to 6 returning starters in the following year. Is that a great luxury to have? And what kind of a trickle-down effect does an experienced, effective offensive line have on the rest of the offense?
Well, when you have experience, I really think it bleeds through not only to the young players that are in the room, but also throughout the offense and the entire team. When you have guys that have had the number of games these guys have played, the experiences, visiting different stadiums on the road, those type of things, I think that only helps. It really helps, really mentoring the young guys, not only, like I said, on the offensive line, but guys in the program. And that's it's talking about dedication to football, the commitment that we're looking for, the weight room and conditioning with Coach Becton, you know, watching film, how you study film. I mean, there's nothing like hearing about a young player watching film with an older player and someone like Brian Driscoll watching film with Mike Safell. I mean, that you can't ask for more than that. I mean, Driscoll's like a sponge. He's going to soak up everything Mike has to say and through his experience and his time here at Cal. And so I do think it trickles not only in our room, but throughout the whole program. And it's invaluable. It really is. And like I mentioned before, you know, we're really leaning on these guys to be leaders and not just in the offensive line room, but in the entire program.
Thanks.
All right. If anyone else has any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll give you a couple of seconds. And if not, we can let Coach Angus go. Coach, I'm not seeing anything.